You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. We are on our Geffen Pictures mini-series. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And returning super special guest, Michelle O'Connell. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing very well.
And we are here to talk about M. Butterfly from 1993. Premiered at the opening film at 1993's TIFF on September 9th, 1993. I was a year old that day because that's my birthday.
Oh.
Released in the U.S. on October 1st, and I asked my mother, why didn't you give me TIFF tickets for my birthday? Released in the U.S. on October 1st, 1993 in 3 theaters. Budget was in between 17 to 18 million. Opening weekend and weighed $57,000. And domestic and overall gross of $1.4 million. Top 5 films that weekend, I would say better than the weekend we had for Little Shop, but let's see. Number 1 is Malice, What a Time.
I like it. I don't love it.
I know, but just like that movie is number 1. What a time. The Good Son, deranged feature film.
Awful. Hate it so much.
Cool Runnings. The Program, I didn't know off name, but that's the James Caan football movie. So you got 2 sports movies.
I have no idea what that is.
I didn't know like off the name or that, but when I saw like the poster, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that poster. But
who's in it?
James Caan. He plays the coach.
Oh, I guess I've seen the poster for it. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
like
like
the
James...
director of Major League. Wow.
Yeah. All right.
David S. Ford?
Yeah.
I love how I know the director of Major League. He also wrote The Sting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. And then the last movie, the top 5, The Age of Innocence.
Scorsese's best movie.
Hell yeah, for that.
Big gap for me to fill. I need to see it. Yeah.
Number 1 song in the U.S. this week. This is 1993, so that means that I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston started the year on absolute terror with a 14-week run. Anyways, the number 1 song was Dream Lover by Mariah Carey, number 1 for 8 fucking weeks.
Good tune.
Yeah. Number 1 song in Canada this week is I'll Do Anything for Love, parentheses, but I Won't Do That by Meatloaf. I forgot that the album version of that is like 48 minutes long. Like Meatloaf just going nuts. There was like 4 different edits. It was like 12-minute album version, single version 7 minutes, radio version 5 minutes.
Music video, if I remember correctly, appropriately directed by Michael Bay.
Wow, did not know that. Wow.
I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right, because a friend of the show, Scout Zafoya, in his Dad Rock video essay on Bad Boys, he talked extensively, I think, about the Meatloaf video, which was a fun discovery for me at the time. Yeah.
I'm thinking, did Fincher do a Meatloaf video? He may have done one.
I don't know.
Where am I at? Meatloaf, check him out. Plot description from Google. Renee Gallimard. I did it. I don't know how I didn't. Played by Jeremy Irons, is a diplomat from France who has been sent to Beijing. While acclimating to life in China, Gallimard meets and becomes enamored of Song Liling, played by John Lon, an opera singer who wears traditional ornate dress and makeup. That's how you do a Google description. You didn't reveal half the goddamn movie. Written by David Henry Hwang, who created the play. He also wrote Possession in 2002, which I believe that's a Dan Mecca classic, and 4 episodes of The Affair from 2015 to 2018.
Oh, wow.
He's a lot better known in theater.
Yes, which the original play won a Tony, I believe, in 88.
It won Best Play as well as Best Featured Actor for B.D. Wong. John Lithgow was also nominated for Best Lead Actor.
Oh, John Lithgow. Okay.
Yeah, in the original production, those were the 2 main roles.
Very nice, very nice. Directed by David Cronenberg, only directed 1 other movie, Fast Company, in 1979. No, I'm kidding. Prior to this, The Brood in 1979, which might be my favorite Cronenberg movie. Scanners in 1981, Videodrome in 1983, that's probably my other favorite one. The Fly in 86, Dead Ringers 88, Team Backup with Jeremy Irons. After this, Jack Nicholson voiced Crash in 1996. A History, I need to rewatch that. I did not like Crash, and I'm just like, what's wrong with me? There's got to be something wrong, because that's a movie made for me. History of Violence in 2005, hell yeah. Eastern Promises in 2007, hell yeah. Crimes of the Future 2012, What Are We Doing? And The Shrouds in 2024.
Crimes of the Future, one of his best.
Some say. I mean, mine are the most straight boy answers for his favorite, so what am I to say? Favorite Cronenbergs. Bryden as the Canadian man to talking about another Canadian man.
Yeah. I will also say, I will add to that prompt of asking a favorite Cronenberg and first Cronenberg. The first Cronenberg I ever saw was History of Violence, which is also, I think, the one I've seen the most. Really like that one a lot. But my favorite, I think, is The Fly, which I've only seen the one time. But that movie, I think, is like really gripping and sad in a way that I really appreciate. Yeah, that's my answer. Everyone else, first and favorite Cronenbergs. Yeah.
My favorite is Dead Ringers, with probably Crash and Crimes of the Future just behind. But first is either The Fly or A History of Violence. History of Violence has the funnier story in that I saw it in theaters on my 15th birthday with my dad and my younger sister, who was definitely too young to see it, but didn't want to join my mom and my two youngest siblings for Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
Why not?
So she just didn't want to see it, and yeah, she found it absolutely traumatizing.
My bad. I said Crimes of the Future. I meant to say Maps to the Stars for 2012. Crimes of the Future is 2022, I believe. So
I think. Sorry if I'm incorrect. I think 2012 he has Cosmopolis, your favorite movie, Kevin. And then Maps to the Stars is like 2015. But then you're right, Crimes of the Future is 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of those also great.
Okay. Yeah. My first, it might have been The Fly. It might have been Videodrome. Both would have been Netflix DVD rentals in like middle school. I think it might have been Videodrome. Yeah, I think it would go with Videodrome. Videodrome is just way too much shit that's in it. That's like, yeah, that movie isn't made for you. It's about snuff films. Yeah. Oh, Kevin likes it. Really? Yeah. And also like with me and him, his Eastern Promises is kind of my cutoff for him. But I've seen all of his movies besides Fast Company, and I love to like 5. I don't know why I kept going, but I did. But I don't understand why I back up against him so much, especially like his more dramatic movies. But it don't work for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get more into it. Starring Jeremy Irons as Renee Guillemard. Prior to this, The French Lieutenant's Woman in 1981, Dead Ringers, Reversal of Fortune in 1990, Kafka in 1991. Hey Soderbergh, quit using AI like a dweeb and release the new edit of Kafka. Also, give me a Schizopolis Blu-ray. Thank you so much. Damage in 1992. After this, Die Hard with a Vengeance in 95, arguably his best film. Lolita in 1997. Dungeons and Dragons in 2000, arguably his best film. Why did I watch that a few years ago? Real Film, The Time Machine, 2002. Last Call, 2002, directed by Henry Bromo, who directed Panic. Listen to our episode. I somehow made that connection. That's great. Kingdom of Heaven, 2005. Inland Empire in 2006. Real Film, Appaloosa in 2008. Real Film, The Words in 2012. Real Film, Beautiful Creatures in 2013.
Saw that in theaters.
No, you didn't. Best shit he's ever been in, The Watchmen miniseries in 2019, and 4 episodes of The Morning Show last year.
And I would also say best shit he's ever been in, The Beekeeper by David Ayer in 2024. No, I do like him in that movie, but yeah.
I'll note that I do kind of have to see Appaloosa because Ed Harris directed it and it has some fans. I'll throw in also in 82, he was in a great movie called Moonlighting by Jerzy Skolimowski. And in 81, the same year he did The French Lieutenant's Woman, he was in the mini-series of Brideshead Revisited, which I saw way back in college, but I recall being very good.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like I need to see more of the serious Jeremy Irons movies as opposed to like the trashy thrillers that I've largely seen him in.
Also, he was in another big Oscar contender, The Mission in 86. Looks good, great music. Movie itself is a little boring.
Is that Roland Joffrey?
Yes, which a little boring is Roland Joffrey's middle name.
I was about to say Captivity's own Roland Joffrey? Okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's the only movie of his I've seen. I'm sorry. John Lone as Song Li Lung. Prior to this, Year of the Dragon in 1985, The Last Emperor in 1987. After this, The Shadow in 1994. Michelle, have you seen The Shadow in 1994?
Long time ago.
Okay. I asked Bryden a few weeks ago, and he was like, what is that? Rush Hour 2 in 2001. War in 2007. Dreadful picture. I had to watch that for the mixed reviews, and bad. Also starring Barbara Sukawa and Ina Richardson and Annabelle Livington.
Ian Richardson has a memorable role as Jonathan Pryce's very irate boss in Brazil.
Oh,
Also was in the British miniseries of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and I believe the original British version of House of Cards, though I haven't seen that.
Oh, interesting.
very interesting. Trivia. David Geffen was one of the producers on the play and was instrumental getting it once he, started doing well, no. He already had Geffen pictures by the time the play came out, so it wasn't like he was waiting to do that, but he was obviously the one pushing for a film adaptation.
But he had been doing theater. In fact, one connection we forgot to mention is that he produced the original theatrical productions of both this and Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, oh wow! I didn't know that about Little Shop.
Yes.
Oh hell yeah!
Nice.
Peter Weir passed on directing this film.
Oh,
The original Broadway production of M. Butterfly by David Henry Hwang opened on March 20th, 1988, ran for 777 performances, won the 1988 Tony Award for Best Play, and was nominated for 1988 Pulitzer Prize for Drama.
wow.
Who was the person who was like, can we do 777A? And they was like, we are done. No. And also 777, a lucky number. Based on the true story of Bernard... I'm fighting for my life. Bernard Bersicat, a clerk working for the French embassy in Beijing, and Shi Pei Pu, a Chinese opera singer.
I think it would be Borsico.
Borsico, okay.
Gotcha.
I apologize to all the French that are listening, which is probably -5, especially after me and Charlie have done our French accents of Kenan Thompson and all that many times. When asked about the decision not only to cast the known actor John Lon for the role of Song, but also giving him second billed star and how that may have ruined the revelation about his character, David Cronenberg has said that not only was Long the best actor for the role, but also was because the ambiguity of whether the character of Renee was actually conscious of who he was dating, but just refused to acknowledge that to himself, plays into the story. Cronenberg had parts of the script, such as the Americans in Vietnam and bombing scenes, removed as he was not interested in it. The first draft of the script featured Guillemard watching the Madame Butterfly opera with his mother as a child, and the ending scene between them and the police van was created by Cronenberg as opposed to a prison that took place in the original play.
I do think it's interesting. You mentioned John Lone. It says on his Wikipedia page anyway that at age 7 he was sent to train in the style of the Peking opera at Hong Kong's Chinchu Academy, where he was trained in singing, dance, and classical Chinese theater techniques. So I imagine that might have had some influence on his being cast as well.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
I must confess I am also not familiar with this play. Despite taking a class, I think this might have been in my final year of university when I was like just kind of like over being in school, and I was maybe not using my time especially well. But I think this play was assigned in one of my theater classes to read, and I didn't get to it. I'm not familiar with the play. I'm do either of you have any familiarity with this play as it's written?
Yeah, I have no familiarity with any play ever. I'm sorry.
Yes, I read the play in college. I reread the play shortly before rewatching the movie for this show. I also wanted to ask if either of you have any familiarity with Madame Butterfly, having either seen or listened to a recording of the opera.
No, my only familiarity. This is just like the classic thing of like me having like the strangest connection to things like adjacent. But
what Community joke did you?
No, it wasn't that. It was I was watching some TV show. I think it was The Deuce, where they dropped like a song by Malcolm McLaren called "Madame Butterfly," where they sample the opera track in it. So when I was watching this movie again, I was like, oh, it's like, of course, the song is
about that song.
Yeah, but no, I was like, that's like the closest I've come to any of the music from that. But yeah.
For the record, this was one of the operas that my family had on CD growing up.
Hell yeah!
I am like I like opera, but I'm at best a casual fan. My younger brother is studying it to perform, so he would definitely be the bigger opera fanatic in our family.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. Nice. Good
Is
for
he
them.
looking to do like a Monster Hunter opera anytime soon?
He loved Tara, so I'm sure he'll love hearing that.
After a century of foreign influence, Asia was about to reclaim herself.
The Red Guard has emerged as a genuinely potent reactionary political force which will seize upon any excuse to justify the expulsion of all foreigners from China.
Onto this immense stage came a diplomat with a romantic vision.
I, René Gallimard, have known and been loved by the perfect woman.
And a performer who brought his fantasy to life. Theirs was a world that can never be revisited. From director David Cronenberg comes an epic story of love and its power to deceive. Academy Award winner Jeremy Irons. The Last Emperor's John Lone. Nothing blinds a man to reality like perfect love.
The prosecution claims Monsieur Gallimard was fully aware of the implications of his espionage activities.
Inspired by the true story and based on the Tony Award-winning play, M. Butterfly.
All the trivia I have, initial thoughts. Is this, Michelle, you had previously seen it. Brian, you had originally seen it, right?
Yes, I actually, when I was in university, I got to take a class on the films of David Cronenberg. So that, like, at that point, I think
It's
I'd only
obligated
seen...
in Canada, isn't it?
At that point, I'd only seen History of Violence and, I think, Scanners. So, like, it was really, like, a great opportunity to see a lot of his movies. Although it was... The course was structured strangely, where, like, we I think watched, like, a lot of his early movies, like Shivers and Rabid and The Brood. But then, like, we basically skipped like his later movies. Like, I think the latest movie we watched of his was History of Violence. Like, we just like saw only the opening, I think, of Eastern Promises, and then like that, like, but yeah, and then like Crash was like optional viewing, and Butterfly was like the one but like, no, it was great to like sort of get like a see the course and be pushed to like watch these movies that have been on my list for years. Yeah, no, it was cool taking that class. I don't think it's a class that's offered anymore at York University, which is too bad, but you know, it's not like you can't just, it's not like Cronenberg's movies are there. It's like, you can only watch them in class, nowhere else.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure before they admit people to York University, it'd be like, how many Cronenberg movies have you seen? But like, I'm studying, gonna grow crew. Like, what are you talking about? How many have you seen?
The crewers have only seen Fast Company.
True. But Brian, what do you think about In Butterfly?
I still don't entirely love this one. It was like, I think going, when I first watched it for the class, I had like basically no idea what it was about. So I think when like it started, and I think maybe like, but we'd seen some of the Cronenberg thrillers like before, in the weeks before, like The Dead Zone and The Fly and everything. So I was really kind of like vibing with like the more like tense, like sort of freakier Cronenberg movies, like in terms of like, you know, like violent events happening. And then this, I think, is like a little more stately, and I think when like they start introducing the elements of like, you know, spine and like, you know, and like, you know, sort of trading and getting secrets from people and everything, I was thinking like, oh, is this gonna like, I was maybe primed for this to get like a little bit more thrilling than I was maybe a bit, I can imagine I was a little bit baffled watching this in a classroom and like, you know, not like having, and watching it even now, I was kind of surprised at like some of the stuff with like, you know, when they're like getting into matters about like, you know, the Vietnam War and like other things where it's like revealed that like Irons has been like, you know, revealing like, you know, pretty like confidential information to John Lone's character, and Lone's character is a spy. I was kind of maybe a bit thrown even on this rewatch of like how the movie kind of glides over perhaps some of the more like some aspects I feel like could be like a little bit more intense in terms of like, you know, just sort of like, those are pretty, I think, high stakes situations. But I don't know. I did find myself appreciating the performances a little bit more this time around. I think Irons plays his character's smugness, I think, very well. I mean, I will say, I had completely forgotten that he's supposed to be playing French. I did not detect any French accent whatsoever in his performance. So it's very strange when you have all these guys with names like Rene Gallimard, who are speaking in British accents. And then at the end of the movie, when Irons gets arrested, there is actually a guy who sounds French speaking. He's like, "Oh, Monsieur Gallimard, you are under arrest." I was like saying, okay, so having this guy sound French when everyone else sounds British is a little strange, but that's not like my reason for not vibing with the movie. But there's a lot of really striking. There are some striking images. I think Cronenberg is like a very good filmmaker. I liked especially the scene near the end in the prison van where like the light is like shining in from like periodically from like outside, and like they're casting like this red light. It's probably like just like traffic lights from outside, but it does like fit with like them sort of like with these characters knowing what they know about each other, sort of re-exploring their feelings of passion that they once had for each other. I did think that was like quite striking to look at. I don't know. This movie just I'm sort of at a distance with this movie the whole time. It never grabs me. I'd say maybe for like the first 2/3, and then it really kind of like rushes through like the last like or not rushes. The big time jump at the end. It is like a lot of stuff that's happening, and I do think it's very well acted. But I don't know. This just doesn't. It doesn't feel quite as. Maybe I'm like missing sort of the urgency that like comes through in some of Cronenberg's movies. I will say that the thing that I admire about a lot of his movies is that like they're all like pretty well paced. I mean, this does get to business, like in terms of like having the characters come together pretty quickly. But I don't know. I don't, and I think Cronenberg is like sometimes has a reputation, or maybe I'm misreading this, but like I do get the sense that sometimes he is viewed as a bit of a robotic filmmaker, and I often find his films quite moving. I mean, I think The Shrouds is like among his most moving movies that he's directed. I think Vincent and Cassell in that lead is like one of the best Cronenberg performances I think that I've seen. It's not like this is lacking in emotion, and especially as like Irons and Lone are shifting the tables in terms of who has the power in their relationship. But I don't know. Maybe I'm still not quite sure why I didn't connect with this movie. Maybe it's I think it like plays the same notes too much in the first 2/3 when in their courtship, but I don't know. This is just it's just not a movie that I frankly connect with. But I will say it's interesting to watch this, having seen other Cronenberg movies, and it is, while it's maybe not as out there in some of the visual style and sort of like the more, you know, in doesn't feature like extreme violence or imagery like some of his other movies do. I do think it is interesting how he does often focus on characters who are trying on new identities, or like finding out that they are interested in things that they maybe had not previously considered. I mean, Crash has like the line I remember from Crash is like when James Spader's riding around in the car with Elias Koteas, it says like, I don't know why I find this all exciting and everything, but there is like, and I don't understand this, but like this is like really interesting to me. And I feel like that is like kind of the Cronenberg line for like a lot of the characters who are kind of like testing the boundaries of where their bodies and minds and emotions go. Yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting kind of watching it in that way, even if I don't find the movie necessarily engaging on like a scene by scene basis or on a whole and everything. It is fun to see how it connects with Cronenberg's interests across his career. That is my take on that. I will open the floor to others.
So I like this movie very much, but I've gone on a bit of a journey with it. I saw this, it was one of a good number of Cronenberg movies I saw late at night on channels like IFC or Sundance or something like that when I was a teenager. And this was certainly one of the early examples of me watching a queer movie at a young age. Full disclosure for those listeners who don't know, I am trans. And I saw the movie again in college while I was writing something about Cronenberg, and it was shortly after my having read the play for the first time. I rewatched it again a couple of years ago, like right before Crimes of the Future was released and right after I had come out as trans, and rewatched it for this shortly after rereading the play, and found that my opinion had shifted a little bit. I still like this movie a lot, but there are some alterations. It's largely faithful to the source material, while making some very key alterations in its presentation and its framing that I think sometimes plays to its advantage, or at least as far as film goes, and sometimes not so much. I found that in my notes, the word that popped up the most was curious.
Hmm.
There's some very curious alterations throughout this thing. I agree with Brighton that he can be more emotional than I think he sometimes gets credit, but this is a interesting movie in that he applies a very clinical lens to a on its face rather melodramatic story. I mean, it's taking the framework of an opera,
Mhm.
taking a very dramatic play. Well, I can talk a little bit more about some of the differences when we get into it, but I thought it was interesting how much of a remove he had us at of letting us in very quickly on the nature of the John Lone character while not necessarily spelling out what these characters are thinking at any given moment and having us really read their faces more than anything else. And I think it's an interesting approach for a movie that is to some degree about repression of one's desires and and attempt to not really come to terms with what it is with what these characters actually want. But yes, some of those alterations are going to be pretty critical to your enjoyment of the movie if you're not feeling it and you end up engaging with the play and feeling that has a better way of presenting it.
Mhm.
Very interested to hear the differences of that. Yeah, like I was saying previously, me and Cronenberg don't really get along that much. What you were saying, Brighton, about people saying his movies are robotic, I agree. Um, Watching The Shrouds, I was like, absolutely not. I'm glad that people love this, but I will say it's a very good bit to be on a date and be like, do you want to see a live feed of my wife's corpse? I thought that was funny.
And
But
that the actress in that scene in The Shrouds, Jennifer Dale, is so good. It's like a one scene performance, but the bit where she's like, "Karsh, you seem like a very nice guy. Do you mind if I smoke a cigarette?" Like, this is just, it's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, I not to this feels like a but like as far as like feeling emotions in Cronenberg movies, like my favorite's like I don't get any emotion other than like hell yeah brother. But like throughout the probably his past like 20 years, I would say he has definitely like Crimes of the Future is like I guess that's a horror movie, but it's like I feel much more dramatic tellings of that. Shroud's definitely a drama. But I'm much more partial to somebody who's a disciple of his, who I think is better, and that's Julia Ducournau. And no, but I will say that as far as Shrouds, it's a movie made by a body horror director that's actually just a drama about grief. Watch Alpha. Just watch Alpha. Yeah, I was kind of iffy on this because mainly it is just, even if it wasn't a Cronenberg movie, not exactly my type of movie where it's just basically a romance. As you can see here, the 33-year-old boy wearing a Cloverfield t-shirt. But there was a lot that I did like about this, but as far as like, it's definitely Cronenberg's biggest movie by chance, and it's also, I definitely went into it to be like, what really drew him to this? Because I'm not somebody that's just like, oh, he's the body horror guy. Like what you were saying, Bryden, was like, yeah, he's very much into identity and what your identity says about other people and what you want to convey to other people, and always the push and pull of not wanting to be seen as that person until you're too deep into it, like a Videodrome or history of violence or anything like that. It's very much people trying to be repressed either by societal norms or anything like that. So I definitely saw the connection to this. It's not as weird as like Wes Craven making Music of the Heart. Like, relax. But has anybody seen Music of the Heart? Is that just me?
No, I
Yeah,
haven't
it
watched
stinks.
this. Oh,
Yeah, it's bad.
it stinks? Okay. Well.
It was. I'm pretty sure that was the last Wes Craven movie I had to watch. And I was like, I did it. Sure, I guess.
As I understand it, a movie he really cared about and wanted to make. It was not just a work for hire thing, but yeah, I am not a fan.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was just like with the Weinsteins, it was like, I'll make Scream 2 and 3 if you let me make Music of the Heart. And they were like,
Yeah.
sure. And like hid his name from all production. Anyways, Music of the Heart, don't check it out. But also it's very interesting that now he's much more like if he put this movie out now, it wouldn't be seen as that out there for him. But I'm always very interested in I even wrote an article about it while I was in college about horror directors very much feeling like they're trapped by the horror thing and they want to break out of it. Like John Carpenter kind of felt that way, but more so he was more so just like, hey man, if they pay me to make horror movies, that's cool. I'd like to make westerns, but those don't make money. And it's like, all right, cool, man. Like Romero very much tried at some points with something like It's Always Vanilla or maybe even like Season of the Witch, even though that is still a horror movie, but still trying to break out of that mold just a little bit. And then like Night Riders and stuff like that. But very much more times than not, production companies or whoever behind the scenes will like give them the chance to be like, yeah, see, you should have just stuck to zombie movies after they like didn't promote the movie like whatsoever. I feel like I'm very far away from seeing in Butterfly. Thought it was fine at best. The commentary that I listened to it made me appreciate it much more because it's very much he's talking about the themes of it and how it combines with the Cronenberg movies. I was like, okay, I definitely respect it more than I just enjoy watching it.
And that commentary you mentioned, it wasn't by Cronenberg, but it was by someone who wrote a book about Cronenberg.
Yes, which I have the name right here.
The Artist is Monster, the Cinema of David Cronenberg. I should maybe give that a read.
They didn't give you that when you enrolled at York University?
No, didn't.
I think he is like a professor, and I meant to look up like where he taught or anything like that. But anyways.
So I think it might be instructive to go through some of the differences between the play and the movie. So for one, the play does play somewhat coy from the start with the identity of the song character who's played in the movie by John Lone and by in the original production of the play by B.D. Wong. It's my understanding that B.D. Wong started going by his initials professionally in part because of M. Butterfly to preserve the secret of the film's or rather the play's story, which is that Rene Gallimard has fallen for a character who is in the Peking opera and is a woman performing in that, but in traditional Peking opera, all of the performers are men. The play introduces that idea early on. There's a bit of a framing device that is not in the movie of Gallimard addressing the audience, which really is only brought in at the very end when he's talking to the prison. So I think it's rather curious that that framing device is not included in the rest of the movie because it takes a lot of material. In fact, while I was rereading the play, I was reading these sections and thinking, did a lot of this come up in narration? I'm not sure I remember. No, it's all gone. And some of that is material that explains, say, opera. It explains the Orientalist tropes in Madame Butterfly and the affection that Gallimard's character has for it. It explains that he has a relationship with a friend in the play called Mark, who is only seen in not exactly dream sequences, but like in a theatrical play, it'll flow from, say, a character addressing an audience to another scene. And Mark is a character who's much more of a womanizing cad, where Renee is a very shy person, which is reproduced in the film, but the play makes a point of drawing a connection to the characters in Madama Butterfly of Pinkerton, the American soldier who marries a Japanese woman and then leaves her and leads to her suicide, and another character whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, who is a more critical character who wants to tell Butterfly the truth but won't actually do so. And he talks about how in real life he's much more of this character and his friend is much more of a Pinkerton character, while in this storyline he is taking on the Pinkerton role to dominate the Song character, and feel more like a man. And that's spelled out, I think, a little more deliberately in the show. There's also, I think, a really interesting diversion where in the movie he has an affair with like a diplomat's wife, I think it is, a German woman who seems around his age. In the show, it's with a younger woman. I think she is a the daughter of a diplomat who is learning Chinese partly so that she can do business and partly because, well, perhaps we'll all need to know Mandarin one day.
Hmm.
Interesting point is that the woman he's having an affair with is named Renee, which is his name, but with two E's instead of one. And she's
Sure.
much more forward. Like she talks about like something like his prick or things like that. Like she starts talking about his penis, and he's very uncomfortable with this, as
Yeah.
opposed to the idealized relationship he has with Song. I think it's interesting that Cronenberg does not bring these parallels in. And I wonder how much of it is. I think in the making, when he signed on to do it, he met with David Henry Hwang, and like they talked a bit about the what the adaptation would be like, and there was some disagreement about the ideas, but with the understanding that while Cronenberg would provide some guidance, that Huang would still end up writing the script. And I wonder how much of the alterations are an attempt to put the film in a more realistic context
Hmm.
without that kind of theatrical framing device, where we're just kind of following along with Renee's actions and trying to determine based on, say, his expression or his interactions in a scene exactly where he stands without the direct address to a theater. But I do think it's curious because I do think those final scenes do show a side of Irons that we haven't seen throughout the film that plays to Irons' strengths for theatricality. I thought of it a bit as while I was rereading the show, the character on paper could very much be the Bev character from Dead Ringers trying to be Elliot, the more assertive twin, and learning that duality is very much there in this one character. As it is, there's a little bit of that there with Irons' character here, but so much of it is this we are presented this fairly reserved, quiet, shy, almost effeminate character in some ways who really only asserts himself in his scenes with John Lone.
Right.
Yeah, especially what's the scene where because he's basically just like an accountant at first before he gets promoted, right? And then all those
Yes,
people.
and that is in the show. He is eventually promoted as he is telling the French first what they want to hear, and eventually is fired when, as it happens in the film, they learn that no, in fact, the Vietnamese and the Chinese are not waiting for us to win.
Right.
Yeah. I do like a lot of the scenes where it's sort of like the feuds that he has with like the people where like he's like being very attentive to like sort of the fudged expense reports, and then like the guy like menaces him by dipping his fingers in his like in his food and is saying like, you know, get off our
Break all
backs or
your
we'll
pencils.
break your pencils in half. Like it's so nerdy. I do like that kind of those scenes. And then also when he gets demoted, he's like, back to the abacus. Like it's like such a dorky comeback. I think
Well,
that's
the
really funny.
dorkiness that is there, and I also think that there is a degree of just masculine bullying in there,
Yeah.
in their treatment of him. And whether that's because they're picking up on a certain queerness to him or not, I think is left a bit open. It is interesting that one other deviation is that in the play, it is his superior does mention that they have all been hearing talk of him having an affair with a local girl,
Yeah.
and that isn't mentioned in the film.
Yeah, you're right about. I like that read of them bullying him, perhaps because they're picking up on queerness. Because when they have that confrontation where they're mad at him for like, you know, sending back like their expenses for review, or like more details. Like he comes in on them. They're talking about the diplomat's wife who they're all flirting with. Like they're talking about like, oh, you won't be able to get with her and everything. And they're all like laughing and everything. And then Irons like tries to join in the laughter. And then like the moment he sits down, everyone like is silent and tries to like get up and leave. So I think it's very pointed that that's what they're discussing when he joins in. I like that read of that scene.
Now, it's also worth mentioning, I know we mentioned that this is based on an actual story that happened with a French diplomat being, the source of information given to the Chinese government through an affair he had with someone he thought was a woman but was actually a man. I did a little bit of reading on the actual case, and apparently, the real guy, Borsico, I think was his name. The real guy, his relationships prior to coming to China were primarily with men. And he had viewed that as maybe something that was institutionalized in European boarding schools rather than something that was part of him. And I do think that certainly informs, well, the reality of what happened with the guy. But I think it is also informed. David Henry Hwang has since done a revised version of the play that added in some new information. I think that was in 2016, 2017, something like
Holy
that.
Lord.
It would make sense of like the 30th anniversary of the play, which I believe that version was directed by Julie Taymor as well, with Clive Owen in the Gallimard role.
Oh wow.
Shoot 'em up,
That's good
zone?
casting.
Yeah, that's very good casting, actually. Especially picking somebody who's like very outwardly masculine, like American masculine for that role. Yeah, I think that the main thing that Cronenberg is interested in, because you're talking about the differences of what they leave out and what they don't, is it wrong to say that he's most interested in like why does Renee like song? And does he know why he likes song? Will he admit why he likes song, or does he not even know why? Like that type of thing.
I think that question is top of mind for Cronenberg. I think the parallels to European imperialism in Asia are certainly there, but they're played. I don't know that I'd say downplayed entirely, but they are given a little less emphasis than they are in the play. I think if nothing else, then you have Gallimard addressing the audience and having some of his pretensions being undercut throughout the play. But you do still see, a lot of his assumptions about how things are going to go for the Europeans and Americans in Asia being reflected in his assumptions that are based entirely on a fantasy that is being presented to him to get information out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the most interesting thing of like, but I don't think the movie isn't positioned in that way, and I don't think it's the audience thing of like trying to figure out why he likes song, as far as much as it is about just like or trying to see somebody not understand why they don't like it, if that makes sense. I think I just said the same thing.
Right. Well, I know Cronenberg had said that he didn't want necessarily to hide from the audience that song was being played by a man. That the question of like, I know there was criticism at the time that about Lone's casting, which I think is largely beside the point because it's not really important whether the audience believes song so much as that Gallimard does, and the questions of why exactly he does is a bit up in the air. Now, it is also worth noting that in David Henry Hwang's conception of the play, and in at least Cronenberg's telling, the song character is a man and not a trans woman. I do think that there is room for some other readings of that. But I do think you ask a different trans person, you'll get a different answer. But I guess my take on that is that the ambiguity is fairly fruitful here.
I'm also not the one to ask, but it's not obviously, but from what we see in the movie, it's not. He's playing this part because Peking opera, that's what they do. But even people around him are just like, so you just you just keep wearing that. Like it's not a, at least outwardly, a trans story. Is that wrong to say? As far as
Well,
like the character, like,
it's I think there's the room for that question. I mean,
true.
there is when Song is with the comrade Chin, her the handler, which that is reproduced fairly faithfully from the play. Those conversations are almost word for word that I could
Mhm.
tell. Shin asks, like, why are you still giving this performance while I'm here and while Renee is not here? And Song says that it's more effective for me to live this way. And that could be a sincere answer, but that could also be a cover for someone who is living in a fairly natural moment for themselves, something that maybe they haven't been able to explore. And again, I think that question is best left open.
Right,
Sure.
because we also don't know a song like how much they're getting out of it. If they really love Renee, if they are completely a spy, that's also left open. Like, do they
Especially
like?
because the spy stuff gets like skipped over, where it's like their handler comes to see them and says like, "Oh, so like you got all this intel from like about like Vietnam." I'm like saying like, I'm like, well, they just didn't show us that, and like we talked about, it's like Cronenberg. You said like Cronenberg was not interested in that, and it's like okay, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I'm like, I kind of like the spy stuff, but like again, it's not the movie. Maybe
I
Cronenberg made the movie he wanted to make. Yeah,
There's also, if I remember correctly, and I was reading the play rather fast before
yeah.
rewatching the movie, but I don't think the actual conversations of, yeah, this many troops are being sent to Vietnam, I don't think that those conversations are shown in the play. I
Right.
think most of the interactions between Song and Gallimard are relatively close to how they're presented in the play, with the caveat that some of their interactions are also in the framing devices, but that which has been completely removed.
My other thing with this movie is like the conversations. I think it's interesting that all the ideas that they're interrogating about, like Irons' character, like Renee's interpretation of of Chinese culture being like being wrong as like as a European outsider and everything, but then also like it's like stuff that's being parroted to him by someone who has like other motives and everything. But like I wonder if maybe the reason I kind of check out of this movie just during some of those scenes is that like it's just like the movie's like it's like they're like just stating the analysis like of like all that stuff like in the dialogue. Maybe that's why I check out of this movie, and I'm just like watching people explain the movie to me, which like it's like those are good ideas, but I'm just like maybe I wonder if maybe I just like sort of struggle to lock into how it represents it. I don't know. It's
Which is
interesting.
also the kind of thing that might work better in a theatrical context, which is another thing that makes me question a little bit Cronenberg's choice to present this in a largely realistic context. And I think maybe talking about it in the context of Cronenberg's larger career at this point in his career might be worth doing because he had certainly done adaptations before, what with The Dead Zone, which is relatively faithful. And his remake of The Fly and Dead Ringers, which are pretty different from the original movie and the original novel, as I understand it. But this was immediately after Naked Lunch and right before Crash, which I think are pretty fruitful combinations of the original author's sensibility and Cronenberg's. Here, I do think it is curious that in the immediate aftermath of Naked Lunch, maybe it's because he wants to get away a little bit from what he had been doing, where there is a bit of a fantasy world presented between, um, say, where the William S. Burroughs surrogate is in the quote unquote real world and where he is in the intrazone. That there's no analog to that in this, even though there's I don't know. Maybe the theatrical framing device could have been presented as a dream, or maybe it could have been presented throughout as this performance for the prisoners, because that final moment I think is really effective. But both that and the the last encounter between Jeremy Irons and John Lone in the prison I don't know the exact term for it, the prison truck, the
Yeah.
transport truck. There's a degree of unreality in both of those scenes of like Do we really think that these two would be transported together and that the Lone would be able to walk through the one door while undressing? Do we really think that these prisoners would sit wrapped for someone doing this bizarre performance at the end? I don't know that that necessarily would make sense in terms of like a realistic presentation, which is why I take it as a little bit of a break from reality, but I also do think that that might have been stronger had the film retained something of that framing device.
You're right. The prison thing, I'm sure, could have been like sprinkled in as like sort of like a flash forward sort of thing, and you're like cutting back and forth. I'm just imagining the hackier version. He gets on stage, Irons gets on stage, he's like, "You're probably wondering how I ended up here. Well, let me take it back."
I can absolutely imagine a version of this being a complete catastrophe following that. So what do I know?
No. I wasn't. By the way, I was not trying to poke holes in that. I was just taking it in the direction of like I'm imagining the hackier version of that. But no,
Absolutely.
I'm sure Cronenberg could have done it tastefully.
It starts like shattered glass.
I don't mean it necessarily as a he should have done this. I think it is interesting that he chooses to present it in a semi-realistic context throughout most of the film, which is a bit of a break from most of the films that he had done previously. I guess Dead Ringers is like more realistic than most of his other movies, but even then, like there's elements of horror in it that are not really present here.
Yeah, like there's like nightmarish dream. There's like dream sequences in that movie, and also like the surgery scenes where they're working with tools where you're just like, what am I looking at here? And it's you mentioned it's sort of like, what if like one of the twins in Dead Ringers like tried to be the other, which that is what happens in the movie. But then it is also sort of like the toxic dynamic of like people who are maybe not treating each other so well in their relationship, but also like needing each other. That is explored here too, where it's like, there's the montage where John Lone is writing the letters and saying like, well, why would you come visit me? And then being like, I never want to see you again. It's like, that's like 3 lines later. It's
that is in the play of Iron, or the Gallimard character avoiding song for quite some time, in part because of as it's represented in the film, a feeling of I've gotten what I've wanted out of this and I'm finding success. And it's when he is it's when he's given the higher position that he goes back to song, because he's feeling more confident and he's able to, at least in his as he sees it, be more dominant. Of course, this is all an act for him. This is all an act that is being presented so he can feel like this submissive as this dominant figure from the West coming to a submissive East, only to gradually find out that this is all just something that's playing to his prejudices and his desire to dominate, that is just all a farce.
Yeah.
Which Song says, that's like the first thing Song says to him. Like,
and he doesn't get it because he's too arrogant.
It's because he doesn't speak in a French accent. That's why. But yeah, it's very identity as performance while also being about actual performer. It's very interesting. Talking about it much more interesting than just watching it. I will say that. I'm very much enjoying talking about it than I did sitting through it.
I think it's interesting that there are also some changes to the Gallimard character to make him slightly less abrasive on paper, but in ways that make him actually creepier. I don't recall in the play anyway him having a point where he says like, we're not treating them like people and that's why we're losing. After seeing that scene initially, it went like, this seems like a huge difference. Oh no, he's full of shit. He actually doesn't mean any of this. Like as it goes on, he's like still 100% like playing that colonizer role, but he thinks of himself as a more benign figure, and at the same time as someone who is fulfilling a role that he believes he has to fill for his butterfly.
Yeah, and he also is like, not even if he was being sincere in that moment where he's just like, we're not treating them like human beings, he's having that realization because he's like attracted to one person, one Chinese person or anything. Not exactly the best way to sort of come around to that humanity. He's like, well, I like these people because I am attracted to this person and everything. It's, I don't know, it's the interesting sort of thing.
Yeah, from the very beginning, he talks about how convincing her performance was. and she parries it with a like, "Do you mean you believe me?" as a Japanese, and then talks about the experiments that the Japanese did on the Chinese during World War II.
Yeah.
Like throughout the whole thing, there is this sort of a dance that the John Lone character is doing to try to entice him to play to his fantasy. And it's interesting. Huang says there's an afterword in this copy of the play that I'm holding where he talks about how it's over the course of the play that Gallimard, at least in one way, realizes that he's the butterfly character rather than the Pinkerton. But how much of that is also Gallimard's self-serving framing of himself as this jilted lover when really he's the one who has also been leaving. Like when he's actually presented with the truth, he can't accept it.
Right.
How much of that is him not willing to accept his own callousness? How much of that is him not willing to accept the truth of the person he's actually been seeing? How much of that is him not willing to accept any sort of complication beyond what he knew as this dominant submissive relationship that he thought he had signed up for?
Mm-hmm.
And that plays to the kind of racist assumptions that he had.
Yeah, that final scene is very interesting of how at that point is he, like, how much has he finally been to realize something about himself, or if he's still at this point performing literally in prison like a different idea of who he thinks he even, like, is he going down with the ship being like, no, I didn't know, or anything like that.
And like, I mean, one of the last things to see with him is like a makeup mirror. So like maybe that's like, that plays its whole like identity thing, like playing different roles or like different visions of oneself. I don't know. It's I would say my final thing with this is like it was a movie where I'm still maybe not. It's still not the Cronenberg that I picture myself going back to in the future, but it was interesting to revisit it. And I initially I think my take as like a like a. How old was I when I saw this? I was like 20 or 21 or anything. Like, I ended up being like, I don't see any of Cronenberg in this movie. Like, I'm watching it now. I'm like, oh no, there is like interesting. The thematic interests are there, but it's just like I even while I personally enjoy how he explores some of those interests in his other movies, but still, it was interesting to revisit and of course discuss it here with you both.
I think it's interesting how this movie and how this play plays with the idea of dominant and submissive roles in heterosexuality being a construct, and the question of whether these ever can be truly equal relationships, and how that informs how this character chooses to see his beloved versus what their relationship actually is.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description